Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Huge day of CDL games here, the very first day of the Major 4 qualifiers in terms of who is going to qualify for the World Championship in Dallas, not that far away. Boston Breach, different team, same old story for them, but the big story really being for the first time in well over 2 months it feels at this point, one of the top teams actually losing to an underdog. Seattle Surge, are they way better than expected, or are Toronto seriously falling off after getting embarrassed in the grand final back at their home major? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new, as always, I greatly appreciate it. The exploding propane tank is officially gone now. The COD League did something to commemorate its kind of experience in the game. A couple of things to mention before we get into the matches themselves. Clay was talking about the 4-bullet MCW, right? We're back on that old patch now. Well, okay, it's the new patch, but it's the old patch as far as the MCW is concerned, when you can hit headshots and get kills quicker than before. There's some debate on this amongst the pros, because if you're going to tell a Counter-Strike player that headshots are going to be worth the same as body shots, they'll tell you, what are you talking about? This is a skill gap. If you can hit the headshots, you deserve the kill very much faster. Now, in COD, it's a bit different to CS, because, well, the game, you get flinch in the game often, like every single time. You get it in CS as well when you've got no armor, but if you do have armor, there's no flinch or aim punch, they tend to call it in Counter-Strike, in the game to kick your bullets up. And that's always been the thing to me with headshot multipliers, that usually it's not used as far as skill goes, because you'll just get flinched up from the chest into their head and you'll hit a headshot and you'll get the kill faster. As Clay says, one is pretty random. I think generally that is true. Now, if you were to have 2 headshots or 3 headshots to get a faster kill by aiming for the head, that probably does add a skill gap. So there's been some debate on this. I think I agree with Clay that 1 bullet to make it a 4-shot rather than a 5-shot to the head is probably not good. But as Scrappy says in the replies, I think it's the opposite. Shooting for the head doesn't take skill, surely it does. And certainly back in Cold War, once they changed the Krig so that it would actually kill in 4 bullets only with 2 headshots rather than 1, I think it actually added to the skill gap, because you could aim for the head deliberately to try and get a 4-shot kill rather than a 5, but you actually had to aim for the head to do it rather than getting a lucky random headshot in there that makes it kill faster. So like it was in Vanguard, for example, when the random headshots would absolutely kill you. So interesting debate on that. And of course, Scrappy was involved in some other controversy, shall we say, on the evening. Before we get to that, I did want to mention this, because there's been some talk going around exactly why Purge is out at what is in the team instead of Vikul tomorrow. So Miami are playing OpTic. Maybe they're chalking it up as a guaranteed loss. But of course, well, Vikul's stepping away for personal circumstances. Now, there's been some speculation even before this as to what they might have been. And David just straight up says it here on Twitter. Now, I don't know if this is actually true or not, but just keep your eyes peeled, I guess, to Vikul's social media maybe over the next day or so, because the Champions League final is tomorrow. And the speculation, anyway, is that Vikul's going to be there instead of playing the match. So if this is true, it's quite interesting, isn't it, for Miami? Like, you've got a player on the team potentially deciding not to play because they want to go and do something, you know, in their personal life, which is maybe fair enough, and it's like, you've got a job to do, have you not? And then you've got their substitute, ErikBooM, who's refusing to even come in because he's like, I want to play challenges and so with my team, don't even want to play with you guys. I'm probably going to get slammed and get embarrassed for a series. I'd prefer to keep playing challenges with my team this weekend. So they've got Persian instead, who speaks Spanish, so it might be fine. But yeah, Purge Masterclass incoming. If this is true, I just think it's, you know, there's quite a lot to say on that, but I don't want to say more until it's, you know, more than speculation, shall we say. Just quickly on HCS London, it's called, isn't it? A hello event that's going on, hosted by Quadrant in London. Obviously formal, as always, with the American pros that come over to London. They're like, damn, this room is tiny, and I don't blame them, to be fair. These are the pools after day 1, just to kind of keep progress on how this is going. OpTic are in kind of the pretty stacked group here with Sen and Quadrant. So obviously, like the host team, Lado Norris's team, they're a pretty good roster as well. But OpTic go 2-0 on the day. So yeah, they are going to advance out of that group with no problems at all going into the rest of the tournament. But we also had Boston versus Minnesota Rocket today. And Major Maniac on the Stocksman podcast, the exclusive that came out, and the episode was doing really well. So check it out if you haven't already. Talking about how he was on Minnesota right at some point. They obviously had that kind of grudge match, revenge match today, and says, look, great organization, but being there in the winter was horrible. Like, it was horrible for the players. And this is kind of why they now have based in themselves in Dallas, right? But this was certainly a thing a couple of years ago that he thinks it massively affected kind of the levels they were able to reach with their team. But let's talk about some of the games, because the first match I want to discuss, and we're going to leave the Ravens versus Gorillas one for tomorrow because it's pretty late here already, and there's plenty else to talk about on these other couple of series. So Toronto versus Seattle Surge. Surge impressed me on LAN more than I thought they would, because I was convinced that Surge were a very good team online, but I was not convinced they would be able to replicate that on LAN. They turn up to LAN, they do a very solid job, all things considered. They were reasonably competitive at the tournament. They took down Carolina Royal Ravens, of course, to get top 6, and, you know, I thought, okay, pretty impressive from Surge, but they eventually then went out in the very next rounds. Online, however, they may be even better than that showing, right? And I think that it's quite clear as of today, possibly, this is like contact lens insight, by the way, so, you know, which maybe was working at times, but same insight of old, maybe in some of the maps in this series, I thought, certainly insight in Modern Warfare 3, rather than, you know, Cold War insight or Modern Warfare 2 insight or whatever you want to say. But Ultra win the game 1. Envoy then makes a nice play here against Hook in the 1 versus 1 to clutch up a 2 versus 4 here on the ReeaL Search and Destroy, and it's looking all pretty good for Ultra. They've come back from the major, their home major, they've come second place, of course, got slammed in the grand finals to OpTic, but they look to be bouncing back on the right track, go up 1-0, go up 2-0. But Surge are definitely a difficult team to beat. They have a very unique style. You know, I've compared it to Miami before, but I think it's Miami's style with generally a bit more teamwork and cohesion for the majority of the map. And I will say, look, we on the Dope Check show, if you guys have ever watched it, and I would recommend it because it is quite entertaining, I think, at least. We've talked trash on Rambo Ray a fair bit, the decisions that have been made. And, you know, I've not held back my criticism of Rambo for forming the team they did at the start of the season. The fact that I had Illy, aBeZy, and aBeZy was just never a good idea. It was never going to work, and it didn't work. So, you know, well done. We got that one right, those that predicted it. But to be fair to Rambo, despite the fact that he's not really said anything publicly, and maybe, you know, I maybe expected him to take some more accountability for the struggles in their roster, what he has done now is put together a team that keeps aBeZy comfortable. I think that's one of the key things, because going into this year, aBeZy was considered to be a real top prospect rookie for very good reason, but he was not on the type of team that he wanted to be on. Now he's on a team that he wants to be on, and he's absolutely cooking. I mean, here he is on the map 4, where they crush Ultra on the Vista hardpoint. CleanX is a really rough map here, which is pretty uncharacteristic for him, but, you know, all of a sudden, it's not like anyone else, his other SMG counterpart, let's say, stood up and took over the game, but aBeZy was really frying. I mean, 30 and 18, I think he went even better than that by the time this game ended. It's kept him comfortable with Brezzy in there, of course, that aBeZy was happy to play with. 04's been a great pick and a great signing. I think Slasher said after he left Boston, or at least recently, that when he was potentially going to stay on Boston and they were going to kick Snoopy, he wanted 04, and 04, when you watch his POV, it's just so impressive. This guy knows what he's doing, he makes the right play all the time. His stats might not indicate it, but, you know, it reminds many, this Surge team, of kind of that old Dallas Empire team from, let's say, Cold War, where they've got Hook there, he's the common denominator, but they played at a very fast pace. Obviously, they had Shotzzy, and they had Illy and Kremp, and at a time they had Fellow, and all this stuff happened in that roster. They had Vivid towards the end of the season, but they played at pace. They would not have a good KD as a team, but they would get their trades, and they would come top 3, top 2 at tournaments, maybe in a less competitive season than now and with more talent than they have today. But this does have echoes, this Surge playstyle, of the Rambo-esque playstyle that was in play, let's say, on Dallas Empire a couple of years ago. So it's always difficult to say how much impact the coaches have really had, but if I'm going to criticise Rambo for decisions made earlier in the season and poor performance of their roster at some point and questionable decision making, I've got to give him his credit when he's made moves that seem to have taken the team in the right direction, and actually just his coaching style in general. There are echoes here of what they're trying to achieve with the Surge roster, and they have the energy, man. That's just one thing. Like, you listen to their comms, they're trying to win. Like, they actually are trying to win, which is something that you'd expect out of all 12 teams, but I just don't think you hear it in the comms of many of the top 12 teams, to be honest, apart from the top 4, really. So Simp is here saying, wow, clapping their hands, as Toronto are about to get reverse swept, and that's exactly what happens. So the second place team at their tournament got up 2-0, they lose the control, they get blown out on the Vista hardpoint, and then after going up 2-0 on the final map, they'd not even won this map this season, by the way, this high-rise search and destroy. 04 takes over. Envoy, I think, ends this game 1-8. He had a real tough time on the final map of the series, and it's Seattle Surge that get the win. So pretty mind-blowing stuff, I'm not gonna lie, that Ultra go down this way. I think it's a mix of both. It's both Surge being better than we think, possibly, and it's Ultra possibly more vulnerable. I mean, it's been a very long time since any one of Toronto, OpTic, or FaZe have lost to a team that they should be beating. And, you know, it's happening right here. And it did make me think about this from Nadeshot that we talked about this morning when he was roasting Scrappy, saying, look, don't watch the tournament, brother. You guys need to be scrimming. And guess what happens later in the day? So as Scrappy says, that's pathetic. GG's Surge. Look, they can talk about online all they want, but the reality is you've gone up 2-0 on a team you should be beating, and you've got reverse swept. Not a great sign. And look, this one series to me makes it, you know, look, it depends what happens at the lands, but you just watch that series and you think, you know what, the firepower outside of Scrappy just isn't consistent enough right now on Toronto. It's difficult to imagine they're going to be able to put together another championship winning run, given how strong OpTic are, given how strong FaZe are. And therefore, you know, it increases the likelihood they're going to have to make a roster change in the offseason. Even Adamu, their owner, effectively founder, says, you know, horrendous showing. We need to get out of our own heads. So maybe that's an indication as to how he thinks they're playing. That's, you know, they're worried about playing badly and therefore they make that a reality somehow. So these were the overall numbers and, you know, they tell the picture in terms of aBeZy playing well and, you know, Scrappy obviously with 103, Envoy 104. Like he started the series hot, but then he slowed down and goes 1-8 final map. So that's going to be where some of the questions are. The other series that I wanted to mention here was Boston versus Minnesota Rocket because, man, what an unbelievable series for the Boston Breach. I could not believe my eyes watching this fight. Well, I could. I mean, it's crazy. I say every time with Boston, I couldn't believe it. But I'm like, I couldn't believe it last time and they did it again. So they bring in Major Maniac, right? And the idea with bringing Major in is that probably you're going to get worse in respawns, but you are going to get better in search and destroy, more icy in search or whatever. They come in here, Beans is popping 3 pieces like he always does. I will say for Beans, as bad as I feel for him, because this guy is at times putting his roster on the absolute, on his back, right? Like his back that he broke or whatever he did a couple of weeks ago, and he's hard carrying the team a lot of the time. He is at least like showing what he's capable of, right? I think that this stint from Beans has made it quite clear to everyone watching that he's absolutely a player that either should be kept on this team or potentially go to another team. But the rest of the team just is not really delivering. And it's not like Snoopy played bad either. You know, I know my question's going to fall to Priestahh as it has done, but they get rid of Penta, they bring in Major Maniac. Has it changed much? Let's be honest. They lose the game 1, right? I thought that with Major, their hardpoint might get worse. He's not, like he's been a Neslo man, right? He'll win you 2-3-5. That's the plan. They went to 5. Again, right? But they win the search and destroy. It's a fair play. They turn up to Invasion here. They'd not won it yet this season. They win it against this Minnesota Rocket team that's stuck together. And maybe, to be fair to Minnesota, this new hardpoint strategy they unveiled today actually worked because they did win both hardpoints pretty impressively so. The control, though, Major gets a nice 5 in a row. Snoopy then makes a great play towards the end of this game and totally shows why he's considered to be, you know, such a superstar level talent. He can make good plays, and he obviously shoots straight. So there are some pieces on this Boston team, but I don't know, like they have the least ice of any COD team that I think I've actually ever seen in my entire life. Snoopy plays this really nicely, ends up clutching this. Well, it's technically a 2 versus 1 here against Gunless, but it's really Snoopy that makes the play. Gunless was mind blown, and obviously they go down 2-1 at the end, but they bounce back very well in the ReeaL. Hardpoint again, the same kind of disappears here from Boston. This new hardpoint strategy got unleashed, and then we go game 5. Boston 1-11 in game 5s. Their only win against Rocket earlier in the season. So, yeah, you can imagine what was going to happen here. This, again, was another round that, I mean, to be fair, Boston shouldn't have won this anyway, really. They were in a 2 versus 4. Beans gets 2. Accuracy then finds himself in a 1 versus 2. The problem is they just split up, you know. It's, again, this thing that Boston love to do. Whenever they're in a 1 versus 2 or 2v1 or 4v3, they split up and they go their own way as Beans runs away to make a flank and Snoopy doesn't go with him, so then Accuracy comes back and gets the 1 versus 2. That's a round you probably shouldn't be losing. This is a round that Minnesota shouldn't have lost. I mean, again, they're trying to trade, but Gunless just misses his shots here with the pistol and Beans absolutely slams him for the 1 versus 2, and then immediately afterwards, Beans goes back and shoots his body. So at this point I thought, wow, here we go, right? Because if you guys don't remember, the Beans versus Gunless drama, the major drama that happened at the start of May last year, where they were talking all sorts of trash to each other, and Gunless was vowing when he got back to the league he was going to slam this guy. Beans clutches the 1 versus 2, slams Gunless, shoots his body, and as soon as I saw this I thought, alright, here we go, Boston are going to do it again, aren't they? They're going to find a way to lose, and that's exactly what happens. I mean, this is the faces as they throw away that round 11. The round that really threw them away was the round before, when they had a 4 versus 3 with bomb down on the site, and then they just ran away. Like, it's a criminal way to play it, but this is how it tends to go for teams that are scared. Like, they know they're on the verge of winning, so instead of like making a play as a team or doing something as together, they just like go their own separate ways. They all get caught 1 by 1 and no one gets a kill. It's like, I've seen it so many times before with this Boston team, and I know Major was meant to come in and fix it, and maybe it doesn't happen overnight, but Major himself was like 3-9, map 5, like he just had a real stinker. Beans went 12-6 for the loss. It's like, I don't know if it matters what you do. You bring in Major, he's meant to fix the surge. It's not making any difference, is it? Like, it's just the same old team. And as Gunless says, 2-0, ain't even fun anymore. These guys just getting slams. And, like, it might never be chalked, but I think it's chalked now. Like, this is official that Boston are done. I mean, there's just no way they make champs at this point. It is comedy. And obviously, Stanley was letting them know. So, man, I feel bad for Beans, like, given the way that he's played and he's trying to put the team on his back. It ain't working. And yeah, in the end, these were the numbers at the end of the series. And look at the damage differential, right? That's what really stands out to me. Beans almost had 20k damage that series. Snoopy had 15,500. And this Major Priestahh duo just had like no damage. And, you know, that is going to be a problem in the respawns. And that's okay if you're going to ice up in the searches. But, yeah, well, we've seen this before. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.